What would you do if, in an instant, your world shrank to just 4 damp stone walls? If the only familiar sound was the echo of your own laments? If the only rhythm measuring your hours was the ceaseless drip of water, seeping through the cracks of a time that no longer belongs to you? Imagine the air. It is thick, heavy, a nauseating mixture that clings to your throat. It is the smell of ancient mold, of the excrement of countless souls before you, and of the sour, metallic sweat of pure fear. Listen. Beyond your own breathing, you hear the distant scraping of chains. It is not an event, not an action. It is the constant background music of this place, the soundtrack of despair. Feel the only texture you know. Beneath your body, the straw is not a bed, but a rotten, damp mass, infested with parasites that do not distinguish between the living and the dead. On your wrists and ankles, you feel the cold, sharp bite of shackles. Every movement, however small, is a reminder of your captivity, an iron punishment on your skin. And in your mind, like a cruel ghost, the memory of the sun's warmth on your face resurfaces, a sensation so simple, so vital, that it now seems to belong to another life, to another man. This is not a literary invention or a scene from a fantasy film. For thousands of people in the Middle Ages, this was the crushing reality of becoming a prisoner. What you are about to hear is not the story of captured kings or great escapes. It is the descent into the daily life of a common man in the clutches of the medieval justice system, a fate often more terrifying than death itself. Forget everything you think you know about the word prison. Erase from your mind the idea of sentences, of rehabilitation, of a penal system designed to punish with time. In the Middle Ages, prison was not the punishment. It was limbo, a terrifying, prolonged waiting period between your former life and the fate that others would decide for you. These places, whether the damp dungeons beneath a castle, the watchtowers of a walled city, or makeshift cellars, did not exist to reform anyone. Their purpose was brutally practical. They were used to hold the accused before a trial that might never come. They were used to tighten the screws on debtors, to break their will and force them to pay every last coin they owed. And they were used to keep prisoners of war and political enemies, not as criminals, but as valuable bargaining chips, awaiting the payment of a ransom that would save their lives. You must understand that there was no unified legal system. Justice was not an institution, but a whim. It changed its face with every fiefdom, depending on the mood of the local lord, the edicts of the king, or the dogmas of the church. Inside here, you had no rights. Your survival depended not on your innocence, but on the will of your captors, or more importantly, on your ability to pay for every small moment of humanity, to pay for food, to pay for a blanket, to pay even for less heavy shackles. For a peasant, an artisan, a common man like you, being seized was not the start of a sentence. It was the beginning of a slow and methodical process of dehumanization, where being forgotten was the most likely outcome. A journey into darkness from which very few returned. Your former life vanishes the instant you are accused. Forget the presumption of innocence. In its place is the hue and cry, a shout that rises in the street and turns your own community into a hunting pack. You are the prey. Feel the rough hands that grab you, the rope that bites into your skin. Feel the humiliation of being dragged through muddy streets as the faces of your neighbors, those with whom you shared bread and labor, turn away with a mixture of fear and contempt. You are not one of them, not anymore. The prison does not stand as a formal building. It is a heavy iron door at the base of a tower, or a simple trapdoor in the floor that opens into total darkness. As you cross the threshold, the first blow is not visual, but olfactory. A wall of rot greets you, a miasma that chokes you and soaks into your clothes, your skin, your soul. Your immediate fate depends not on the severity of your alleged crime, but on the weight of your purse. The jailer is not a state official. He is an entrepreneur of misery, and you are his new source of income. He charges you for food. He charges you for a handful of less filthy straw. He even charges you for the privilege of wearing shackles that don't leave your legs raw. If you cannot pay, the system has a very simple solution. You do not eat. It is then that you understand. Justice is not blind, it is a business. The vague hope you held for a fair trial evaporates, replaced by the most primal and visceral fear of all, the fear of starving and freezing to death in complete darkness. Your true enemy is not the law. It is the system itself, designed to squeeze you dry and crush you financially, long before it decides if you are guilty. But not all prisoners are equal. While you are thrown into a common dungeon, an overcrowded, filthy pit, a nobleman or a knight captured in battle is treated in a radically different way. He is not a criminal. He is an investment. His prison is often a private room high in a tower. Perhaps he has a fireplace to ward off the cold, a bed with a feather mattress, and even servants to attend to his needs. His food is that which befits his status, washed down with wine. His main torment is not gangrene or starvation, but boredom and the tedious negotiation of his own ransom price. This brutal difference is not an exception. It is the rule. It serves to remind you of the fundamental truth of this era. Justice, suffering, and even the value of a human life are concepts that depend entirely on the social class to which you belong. At the bottom of the pit, this truth is the only thing you have left. Your day-to-day life is not a sequence of dramatic events. It is a crushing cycle, a downward spiral of darkness, hunger, and decay. Monotony is a poison sipped slowly. The darkness is near absolute. Perhaps, if you are lucky, a tiny slit high in the wall lets in a pale sliver of light for a few hours. That beam of light becomes your sun, your moon, your only clock. Sounds are magnified in the silence. The scratching of rats in the walls, the dry, cavernous cough of another prisoner, the muffled groans of those who have lost hope. It all blends into a funereal symphony. Hunger is a beast that gnaws at your insides, a dull, constant ache. Thirst burns your throat, forcing you to drink from a bucket of filthy water, knowing that every sip could be a ticket to disease. There are no routines. There is no morning or night. There is only the now, a continuous present of suffering that merges days and nights into a single long nightmare. Food is not a right. It is a miracle. There are no guaranteed rations. You depend entirely on the charity of strangers, or on the food that your family, if you have one and they know where you are, can bring you. You learn to shout through the bars if your cell faces the street. You learn to beg, to plead for a crumb of bread from passers-by. Your voice joins the chorus of the desperate. The food sometimes provided by the jailer is a mockery. Bread so hard and moldy it could break a tooth, and a murky broth that is little more than hot water. Your mind, desperate to survive, begins to degrade. The notion of time vanishes. Hope transforms into a heavy apathy, a cloak that protects you from the pain of wanting. You look at the other prisoners and no longer see companions in misfortune. You see competitors, rivals for a piece of bread, for a sip of clean water, for a less damp place to sleep. Hunger has become the only force governing your existence. The dungeon is a living, sick organism, and you are a part of it. Death by an executioner's sword is an almost noble fate compared to the reality here. The most common death is slow, septic, and anonymous. The filth is total. There are no latrines. A single bucket in a corner must serve the needs of dozens of men. The stench is so potent it burns your nose and eyes. The straw on the floor is a putrid carpet, a mixture of feces, urine, vomit, and food scraps. It is a paradise for an army of lice, fleas, and rats that crawl over your body at night, seeking warmth and sustenance. The freezing damp from the stone walls seeps into your bones, causing a chronic pain that torments you relentlessly. The air you breathe is thick with the smell of infected wounds, of dysentery, of the sweet, nauseating scent of decaying flesh. Here you meet jail fever, typhus, a disease that spreads like fire in a haystack. The constant proximity to other sick bodies guarantees contagion. To see a fellow prisoner shaking with fever is to see your own future. There is no medical care. A simple cut from the rusty edge of a shackle can become inflamed, redden, and turn into gangrene that will devour your limb and then your life. Slowly, you feel yourself rotting alive. You lose control over your own body, which becomes a map of sores, rashes, and aches. Fear changes its shape. You no longer fear the guard or the executioner. You fear the feverish touch of another prisoner, the bite of an insect, the next spasm in your gut. Death ceases to be an abstract terror and becomes a familiar presence, almost a neighbor. Sometimes in the darkness, you hear it. Whisper your name and feel the urge to welcome it. And then there is a worse place, a fate reserved for those who must not only be punished, but erased. It is called the oubliette. The word comes from the French oublier, to forget. Imagine a vertical shaft, a stone chimney sinking into the bowels of the earth. The only opening is in the ceiling, far above you. You are thrown inside. The fall breaks your ankle, but no one cares. The darkness here is not partial. It is absolute, thick, as if made of solid matter. The silence is so profound you can hear the blood pounding in your ears. There are no other prisoners. You are completely alone. If food comes, it is thrown from above, landing in the mud and filth at your feet. You have to grope for it like an animal. You scream until your throat bleeds, but the sound goes nowhere. The stone swallows it, smothers it. Your own voice dies before it can escape. The purpose of the oubliette is not to hold you. It is to annihilate you, to make the world forget you, and for you to forget the world. It is psychological death, being buried alive, long before your body finally gives up. Long before any instrument of torture touches your skin, your mind is already being systematically dismantled. The prison itself is the primary tool of psychological torture. The most effective weapon is uncertainty, the not knowing. You don't know exactly why you were arrested. You don't know when you will be tried, if ever. You don't know if your family is alive, or if they even know that you are. Every day is an abyss of ignorance. The jailer plays games with you. He whispers false promises of freedom in exchange for a coin you don't have. He lets you hear the screams of another man being interrogated in a nearby room so that your imagination can do the rest of the work. The perpetual darkness becomes a canvas for your fears. The shadows dance and take on monstrous forms. Distant echoes transform into voices whispering your name. You begin to doubt your own senses. The architecture itself is designed to crush you. The corridors are labyrinthine. The doors are intimidatingly thick. The subterranean location constantly reminds you that you are buried. Everything is designed to generate a feeling of absolute helplessness. Torture does not need racks or pincers. The building itself is the instrument. Madness ceases to be a fear and becomes a possible escape route, a refuge from the unbearable reality. Your identity erodes. The man you were, the father, the husband, the artisan, fades away, replaced by a creature that knows only fear and hunger. You stop fighting for physical freedom. The only battle you have left is to hold on to one last tiny fragment of your own sanity. If you survive the hunger, the disease, and the madness, the end of your confinement may finally arrive. But the word freedom rarely means a return to your former life. It is often the prologue to a new form of suffering. If you make it to trial, do not expect an impartial process. It is a public spectacle designed to reassert power. Perhaps you will face a trial by ordeal. You will be forced to hold a red-hot iron and walk 3 steps. Your innocence or guilt will not be decided by a judge, but by the wound itself. If it becomes infected in the following days, it is a sign of God's wrath. You are guilty. The alternative is a jury of your peers, men who already condemned you the day they dragged you through the street. The final. Punishment is almost never more time in prison. That would be a waste of resources. The punishment is corporal, public, and exemplary. The whipping post in the town square awaits you, each lash tearing away skin and dignity. The branding with a hot iron awaits you, a stigma you will carry on your face or hand forever, announcing your crime to all. Or worse, mutilation. A hand cut off for theft, an ear for a lesser offense. The punishment not only inflicts excruciating pain, but it turns you into an outcast, incapacitates you for work, and marks you as social waste for life. Humiliation is a fundamental part of the sentence. It is in that moment that you understand the final truth. The system was never interested in justice. Its only goal is control, deterrence through terror. To survive prison means to leave it as a broken, mutilated, and stigmatized man, unable to ever be who you were again. But let's be honest, that was not the most common fate. The most likely fate, for the common for. Man thrown into the darkness was neither trial nor mutilation. It was, simply, to be forgotten, to die of typhus in a corner, consumed by starvation, without ever seeing the light of day again. Your name, erased. Your existence, an echo that no one heard. Imagine for one last moment that cell. The prisoner we were no longer counts the days. His world is nothing but cold stone, hunger, and the blurred memory of a sky he may never see again. He will not die in a spectacular execution, but in silence, a victim of typhus or an infected wound, and his name will be lost to history, like so many others. The story of the medieval prisoner reminds us of a brutal truth. Before the idea of human rights, justice was a privilege, not a right. Their suffering was born not from the cruelty of a single tyrant, but from the indifference of a system that saw not the man, only his crime or his value in coin. It teaches us that true terror is not always active violence, but abandonment, oblivion, and the slow annihilation of the human spirit in the most absolute darkness. If you could send a single object into that medieval cell to help a prisoner survive, what would you choose? Food, a tool, or a book? Tell us why in the comments. If this journey shook you, subscribe to Steel Chronicles. Here, we don't just tell history, we relive it.